Welcome, dear listener, to another gentle journey through the shadows of history. Tonight, we invite you to settle back, perhaps pull a soft blanket closer, and allow your mind to drift into the timber-framed taverns and stone-walled kitchens of the 16th century. You are safe here in your comfortable present, wrapped in the certainty of clean water flowing from taps and beverages of your choosing. As we explore a time when drinking was not pleasure, but survival itself, tonight we shall discover what it truly meant to quench one's thirst when water was death's messenger, and ale was the nectar of life. The very act of drinking held meanings we can scarcely imagine today, woven into the fabric of daily existence, with threads of necessity, ritual, and desperate hope for another dawn. Imagine yourself stepping through the heavy wooden door of history, where the morning light filters through diamond-paned windows onto pewter tankards and wooden bowls. Here, in this distant world, the simple act of lifting liquid to one's lips carried the weight of survival, social standing, and a delicate balance between life and the grave. The rhythm of daily consumption followed ancient patterns, where morning ale replaced our morning coffee, where small beer accompanied every meal like water accompanies ours today. In this world of the 1500s, to drink was to live, and to refuse drink was to court death in forms both swift and agonizing. Picture yourself wakening in a world where the very streams and wells that should nourish life instead harbor invisible enemies: cholera, typhoid, dysentery. These names held terror beyond our modern comprehension, creeping through water sources like silent assassins. The people of Tudor England understood this danger with an intimacy born of loss, watching neighbors and loved ones succumb to what we now know as waterborne diseases. Their solution was as elegant as it was necessary. They transformed grain into liquid salvation, creating beverages that could sustain life while warding off the specter of contaminated water. The air grows thick with the scent of malt and hops as we prepare to enter their world completely. You can almost hear the gentle bubbling of fermenting barrels, the soft splash of liquid poured into waiting vessels, the quiet conversations of those who understood that every sip was both sustenance and protection. Please consider subscribing to the channel and drop a comment below about your own thoughts on this fascinating glimpse into our ancestors' liquid sustenance. Please consider subscribing to the channel and hit the like button. It motivates and helps me keep bringing videos in this format. If you'd like to hear about a specific topic, leave a comment below, okay? And I'll show you in the video when your topic is chosen. The cock crows in the distance, and the gray light of dawn seeps through shuttered windows across England, in countless homes, from humble cottages to manor houses. The day begins not with water, but with the gentle hiss and foam of ale being poured into wooden bowls and pewter cups. This is the morning ritual of survival, as essential as breathing, as natural as the rising sun. Imagine yourself awakening in this world where the first taste to touch your lips is the mellow sweetness of small beer, where the day's hydration begins with fermentation's ancient gift. The brewing process began long before this dawn, in the careful hands of the alewife who tends her craft with the dedication of a priestess. Picture her in the early hours before sunrise, moving through her domain of wooden vats and copper vessels, testing the warmth of water with practiced fingers, measuring barley and oats with scoops worn smooth by countless repetitions. Air around her is thick with steam and the rich, earthy aroma of grains beginning their transformation from simple seeds into liquid sustenance. Her movements are precise, economical, each gesture born from years of experience and the weight of responsibility for her household's survival. The water she uses has been boiled. Though she may not understand the invisible battle this process wages against disease, the heat that converts starches to sugars also destroys the microscopic enemies that lurk in well water and stream. To her practiced eye, Good brewing water should be clear and sweet tasting, drawn from sources known to produce wholesome ale. Wells positioned away from privies and refuse pits, springs that run clear even after heavy rains. These are the trusted sources that separate life from death, health from the wasting sickness that claims so many as the malted barley meets the heated water. Ancient alchemy begins its work. The grain releases its stored energy in the form of sugars, creating a sweet liquid called wort that will soon become the foundation of the day's sustenance. The alewife stirs her mixture with a long wooden paddle, watching for signs that tell her the conversion proceeds properly. Two hot and bitter compounds will leach from the grain husks. It's cool, and the essential sugars will remain locked away, leaving thin, unsatisfying liquid that provides little nourishment. Women dominated the brewing trade in this era, their knowledge passed down through generations like precious heirlooms. The alewife occupied a position of crucial importance in her community. Her skills literally meaning the difference between life and death for entire households. She understood the behavior of yeast as we might understand the moods of a close friend, reading signs in foam and fermentation that told her when her brew approached perfection. Her reputation rode on every barrel, every batch, every pewter cup filled from her carefully tended stores. The economics of brewing reflected its central importance in daily life. Households allocated significant portions of their grain stores to ale production, understanding that bread alone could not sustain life in a world where water carried death. Barley, oats, wheat, all found their way into the brewing vessels, quoit, each grain contributing its own character to the finished product. Barley created the classic mild ales that formed the backbone of daily consumption. Oats produced a fuller, more nutritious beverage that could substitute for solid food when necessary. Wheat, when available, created lighter, more delicate brews, favored by those who could afford such refinements. The rhythm of brewing followed natural cycles and household needs with meticulous precision. Large brewing sessions might occur weekly or bi-weekly, depending on the size of the household and the storage capacity available. The brewing day required careful planning and coordination, as the process demanded attention from early morning until late evening. Water had to be heated, grains mashed and strained, hops added at precise moments, and the finished wort cooled and transferred to fermentation vessels where wild yeasts would work their transformative magic. Storage presented its own challenges and solutions. Wooden barrels, bound with iron hoops and sealed with pitch or beeswax, housed the family's liquid stores in cool cellars or dedicated brewing rooms. These vessels represented significant investments, requiring regular maintenance and replacement as they aged beyond usefulness. The cooper's craft supported the brewer's art. His carefully shaped staves and precisely fitted hoops creating containers that could preserve precious ale for weeks or even months when properly maintained. As midday approaches in our Tudor household, the pattern of consumption continues its steady rhythm. The noon meal, whether elaborate or simple, includes ale as naturally as we might include water or juice. Servants move through the household, carrying pitchers and filling cups with practiced efficiency. The stable of beverages available reflects both season and circumstance. Fresh ale still cloudy with yeast, older ale that is clear to amber transparency. Perhaps even stores of the previous season's brewing carefully preserved 4 times when fresh supplies run low. The sun climbs higher, casting longer shadows through the diamond-paned windows. The household settles into the comfortable rhythm of the midday meal. Picture yourself seated at a long oak table, worn smooth by generations of elbows and pewter cups, as servants move with quiet efficiency around you. The air carries the mingled scents of roasted meat, fresh bread, an ever-present undertone of fermenting grain that permeates every corner of this Tudor world. Here, at this table, the intricate dance of social drinking begins to reveal itself in ways both subtle and profound. The hierarchy of the household manifests itself in the vessels from which different members drink. The master of the house lifts a fine pewter tankard, its surface gleaming with the polish of recent cleaning, its substantial weight speaking to both prosperity and permanence. His wife drinks from a matching cup, though perhaps slightly smaller, acknowledging her important but secondary position in this carefully ordered world. The children receive their portions in wooden bowls or simple pottery cups, teaching them from earliest youth that their place in society determines even the vessels that touch their lips. But observe more closely, and you will notice that the liquid within these varied containers remains remarkably consistent. Rich or poor, master or servant, all partake of the same fundamental beverage, the mild ale that has become the lifeblood of English civilization. This democratic aspect of Tudor drinking culture speaks to practical necessity rather than philosophical equality. Death from contaminated water respects no social boundaries, claims no favorites among the classes. The alewife's craft protects peasant and nobleman alike, though the vessels and circumstances of consumption may differ dramatically. The afternoon hours bring their own patterns of liquid sustenance. It's different from our modern habits, as the song of nightingale differs from the roar of traffic. Workers in the fields pause in their labors, not for coffee breaks or energy drinks, but for measured draughts of the same pale ale that began their day. The plowman stops his oxen, reaching for the leather bottle that hangs from his belt like a talisman against dehydration. The shepherdess on distant hillsides drinks from a wooden cup carved by her own husband's hands, the liquid within connecting her to the household brewery, to the community's survival, to the ancient chain of knowledge that transforms grain into life. In the towns and cities, different rhythms emerge but follow the same fundamental principles. The merchant pauses in his calculations to wet his throat with ale drawn from barrels in his storeroom. The silversmith sets down his delicate tools to drink from a cup that showcases his own craft, the metal gleaming even as the contents provide the hydration necessary for his intricate work. Market sellers call out their wares while periodically refreshing themselves from jugs that sit beside their displayed goods. The consumption of ale as public and unremarkable as breathing itself, the brewing of different strengths and varieties, adds complexity to this tapestry of consumption. Small beer, with its minimal alcohol content, flows as freely as water might in our modern world, but stronger brews await special occasions, times when the normal rules of careful consumption yield to celebration or necessity. Harvest festivals see the tapping of barrels kept specially for such occasions, their contents rich with the concentrated essence of malted grain. Wedding celebrations call forth ales brewed months in advance, their flavors mellowed and refined through patient aging in oak casks. The seasonal nature of brewing creates its own rhythms within the household calendar. Spring brewing utilizes the fresh grains of the previous harvest, their flavors bright and clean after months of careful storage. Summer brewing requires additional vigilance, as the warmth that speeds fermentation also encourages spoilage and contamination. Autumn brings the great brewing sessions. Households prepare for the lean months ahead with barrels upon barrels of liquid sustenance. Winter brewing becomes a careful balance between necessity and resource conservation. Utilizing stored grains with the precision of a miser counting coins, women's knowledge of brewing extends far beyond simple craft into the realm of household medicine and nutrition. The wise alewife understands which herbs might be added to strengthen weak constitutions, which spices could settle troubled stomachs, which techniques produce the most nutritious results from limited grain supplies. Her brewing chamber becomes a kind of laboratory where ancient wisdom meets daily necessity, where the survival of her family depends upon skills passed down through countless generations of mothers and daughters. The tools of the brewing trade tell their own story of ingenuity and adaptation. Wooden paddles worn smooth by constant stirring, their handles shaped by countless hands. Copper kettles passed down through generations, their surfaces burnished to a deep golden glow by years of faithful service. Sieves woven from rushes or fashioned from pierced metal, each designed to separate the precious liquid from spent grain with maximum efficiency. These implements occupy places of honor in the household hierarchy, their importance rivaling that of the finest furniture or most precious jewelry. Storage and preservation techniques reflect centuries of accumulated wisdom about maintaining liquid supplies in a world without refrigeration or modern preservation methods. Cool cellars, dug deep into the earth, provide natural refrigeration for precious barrels. Stone floors and walls help moderate temperature fluctuations that could spoil entire batches of ale. Ventilation systems, simple but effective, prevent the buildup of dangerous gases while maintaining the stable conditions necessary for proper fermentation and storage. The economic implications of household brewing extend far beyond simple cost savings into the realm of survival strategy. Families allocate significant portions of their grain harvests to brewing, understanding that liquid calories often prove more reliable than solid food during times of scarcity. A well-managed brewing program could stretch limited grain supplies through careful management of different strengths and varieties, ensuring that the household maintains adequate liquid nutrition even when bread becomes scarce. Social aspects of drinking revealed themselves in countless subtle ways throughout the Tudor day. The sharing of a cup becomes a gesture of friendship and trust, as intimate as offering food from one's own plate. The refusal of offered drink carries implications of suspicion or hostility that could damage relationships for years. The quality of ale served to guests reflects the host's regard for their visitors, with the finest reserves brought forth for honored company, while ordinary small beer suffices for casual callers. Religious implications of drinking create their own complex web of meaning and practice. Monks in their monasteries often serve as the most skilled brewers in their regions, to accumulate lifestyle and accumulated knowledge, creating beverages of exceptional quality. The blessing of new batches becomes a ritual that acknowledges the divine gift of fermentation, the miracle that transforms simple grain into life-sustaining liquid. Holy days and religious festivals call for special brews, their preparation beginning weeks or even months before the actual celebrations. The afternoon meal, whether substantial or simple, reinforces these patterns of consumption with the reliability of clockwork. Picture yourself at table again as the light grows longer and more golden, illuminating the faces of family members and household servants gathered around the same oak boards. The children, having consumed small beer throughout the day, show no signs of intoxication. Indeed, the alcohol content is so minimal that they remain as alert and energetic as modern children sustained by milk and juice. This is perhaps the most remarkable aspect of Tudor drinking culture, the ability to consume fermented beverages from dawn to dusk without any noticeable effect on behavior or judgment. The techniques for managing consumption throughout the day demonstrate sophisticated understanding of alcohol's effects in the human body's needs. Strong ales receive dilution with small beer or even carefully boiled water, creating beverages perfectly calibrated for continuous consumption. The timing of stronger drinks aligns with meals, when food provides a buffer against alcohol's effects. Evening consumption often features the day's weakest brews, ensuring that sleep comes naturally rather than through alcoholic stupor. Weather patterns influence drinking habits in ways both obvious and subtle. Hot summer days call for lighter, more refreshing ales, often flavored with herbs or flowers that provide cooling effects. Cold winter months see the consumption of slightly stronger brews, their modest alcohol content providing welcome warmth to bodies struggling against bitter temperatures. Rainy seasons require extra vigilance in brewing and storage, as excess moisture encourages spoilage and contamination. in ways that could devastate household supplies. As afternoon fades toward evening, the day's final brewing activities began to wind down in households throughout the realm. The alewife checks her fermenting vessels, cased in temperatures and observing the behavior of yeast as it works its ancient magic. Steam rises from cooling kettles as the day's fresh batches settle into their transformation from simple grain to liquid sustenance. The air grows thick with the sweet, malty aromas that will permeate the household through the long night ahead, promising fresh ale for tomorrow's dawn and the continuation of this endless cycle of survival through fermentation. The sun hangs low on the western horizon, painting the thatched roofs and timber frames in shades of gold and amber that mirrored the precious liquid within countless household vessels. As evening approaches, the rhythm of drinking shifts subtly, but perceptibly, like a familiar song transitioning to its final verses. Picture yourself in this twilight world where the coming darkness brings not the promise of modern entertainment and electric light, but the gentle settling into rest that has marked human evenings since time immemorial. The drinking patterns of these final hours revealed themselves as perhaps the most intimate and essential of the day's liquid rituals. The evening meal, known as supper, in this Tudor world, presents the day's most substantial food alongside its most carefully considered beverages. The master of the house may finally indulge in stronger ale, saved throughout the day for this moment when work has ended and the body can safely process higher levels of alcohol without compromising productivity or judgment. Watch as he lifts his pewter tankard with the satisfaction of labor completed. The contents within, representing both reward for the day's efforts and preparation for the night's rest. But even this stronger evening ale remains remarkably mild by our modern standards. Perhaps 4 or 5% alcohol at most, it provides gentle relaxation rather than intoxication, warmth rather than stupor. The brewing wisdom of generations understands the delicate balance between providing adequate nutrition and ensuring that tomorrow's dawn will find the household capable of another day's survival. This is drinking as sustenance elevated to art form, consumption guided by necessity but refined through centuries of accumulated knowledge. The children receive their final portions of the day in wooden bowls worn smooth by countless small hands, their contents perhaps mixed with warm milk from the household's cows or goats. This evening ritual serves multiple purposes, providing final hydration for bodies that will spend long hours without liquid intake, delivering essential calories to support growth and development, and maintaining the comforting routines that help young minds settle into peaceful sleep. The alcohol content remains so negligible that modern parents might be surprised to learn their ancestors considered such beverages appropriate for children of all ages. Servants and laborers gather in kitchens and common rooms, sharing communal vessels filled with the day's remaining small beer. Their conversation flows as gently as the liquid they consume, touching on the day's work, tomorrow's tasks, the small dramas and satisfactions that make up the fabric of ordinary life. These evening gatherings serve social functions as vital as the nutritional ones, binding households together through shared experience and mutual dependence that modern individualism struggles to comprehend. The preparation for night involves careful attention to liquid supplies and storage that reflects the vulnerable nature of existence in this era. The alewife makes her final rounds of barrels and vessels, showing that seals remain tight, that temperatures stay stable, that the precious contents remain safe from contamination or spoilage through the dark hours ahead. A single barrel gone. Bad can mean the difference between health and sickness for an entire household. Making these evening inspections matters of life and death rather than mere housekeeping in the great houses of nobility and wealthy merchants. Evening drinking takes on additional layers of ceremony and significance. The final cup of the day might be served in vessels of silver or gold, their precious surfaces reflecting candlelight in patterns that dance across elaborately carved walls. But the fundamental purpose remains unchanged, to provide safe hydration and gentle nutrition as the household prepares for sleep. Even the wealthiest lords and ladies of the realm cannot escape the basic necessity that governs all Tudor drinking, the need for safe, liquid sustenance. In a world where water carries death, the bedchamber receives its own provisions for the night hours, as chamber pots are not the only vessels kept beside sleeping areas. Small ewers filled with weak ale or well-boiled water provide relief for those who wake thirsty in the darkness, their contents offering comfort without the risks associated with stronger beverages or untreated water. These nighttime supplies represent another layer of the elaborate defense system that Tudor households erected against the invisible enemies that lurked in contaminated liquids. Winter evenings bring their own patterns and challenges to the drinking rituals of this bygone era. The coming cold makes warmth as important as hydration, leading to the preparation of heated ales spiced with precious imports like cinnamon, cloves, and nutmeg. These warming drinks, known as caudle or posset, provide both physical comfort and psychological preparation for the long, dark hours ahead. The spices themselves, worth small fortunes and carefully hoarded throughout the year, transform ordinary ale into medicine for body and spirit alike. The process of heating evening beverages requires careful attention to prevent the destruction of precious alcohol content through excessive boiling. Skilled cooks understand the delicate balance between achieving proper warmth and maintaining the beneficial properties of fermented liquids. Iron pokers, heated in kitchen fires and plunged into waiting cups, create the characteristic sizzle and steam that marks properly warmed ale, while copper vessels conduct heat evenly without imparting unwanted metallic flavors to the precious content. Pregnant women and nursing mothers receive special attention during evening consumption, as household wisdom recognizes their particular nutritional needs. Ales enriched with eggs, cream, and honey provide additional nourishment for women sustaining themselves and growing children. These caudles and possets represent the medical understanding of the era applied to brewing arts, creating beverages that serve both as food and medicine for those whose bodies work the hardest to sustain life. The sick and elderly also benefit from specialized evening preparations designed to provide comfort and nutrition to weakened constitutions. Thin ales mixed with herbs and honey offer gentle sustenance to those unable to consume solid food, while stronger preparations might include wine or spirits carefully diluted to provide warmth without overwhelming delicate systems. These medicinal drinks blur the lines between beverage, food, and pharmacy in ways that reflect the integrated approach to health and nutrition that characterized Tudor life. Religious observances influence evening drinking patterns through prayers and blessings that acknowledge the divine gift of fermentation and the daily miracle of survival through another day. Households might pause before their final cups to offer thanks for preservation from the diseases that claimed so many, for the skill of brewers and the abundance of grain, for the countless small mercies that allowed them to see another sunset in safety. These moments of gratitude transform simple consumption into sacred ritual, elevating survival to worship. The economics of evening consumption reveal themselves in the careful rationing and preservation techniques that ensure supplies last through the night and into the following day. Partial barrels receive special attention to prevent spoilage, while opened vessels are covered with clean cloths or wooden lids to protect their contents from dust and contamination. Every drop represents investment of grain, fuel, time, and skill that cannot be casually wasted or carelessly protected. Social visiting during evening hours often revolves around the sharing of drinks between households, as neighbors and friends call upon one another during the brief respite between days' work and night's rest. The quality of beverage offered to evening visitors speaks volumes about relationships and social standing, with the finest ales reserved for honored guests, while ordinary small beer suffices for casual callers. These liquid exchanges weave networks of obligation and friendships that bind communities together through shared consumption and mutual hospitality. The transition from drinking to sleeping requires its own careful choreography in a world where morning brings immediate need for clear thinking and steady hands. Even the mildest ales must be consumed with attention to timing and quantity, ensuring that dawn finds the household ready for another day of survival, rather than suffering from overconsumption. This delicate balance between adequate nutrition and excessive indulgence reflects the practical wisdom that governs all aspects of tutor life. That children learn these patterns through observation and gradual participation, their small bodies adapting to consumption patterns that would seem alarming to modern parents, but represent perfect calibration to the realities of 16th century life. Boys destined for agricultural labor develop tolerance for slightly stronger brews, while girls learn the brewing arts that will make them valuable wives and essential household managers. These gender-specific drinking patterns reflect broader social expectations, while serving practical purposes related to different life paths and responsibilities. The preparation of tomorrow's supplies begins even as evening consumption continues, with fresh water set to boil for morning brewing and grain measured out for the next day's batches. This overlap of ending and beginning reflects the continuous nature of survival in an era where stopping the cycle of brewing and consumption could mean disaster for entire households. The alewife's day never truly ends, as her vigilance must extend through the night to ensure that dawn brings fresh opportunities for transforming grain into life. As the final cups are emptied and the last prayers whispered, the Tudor household settles into the darkness of night with bodies properly hydrated and spirits prepared for whatever challenges tomorrow might bring. The rhythm of consumption that began with morning ale concludes with evening's gentle relaxation. It's a perfect circle of liquid sustenance that has carried the family safely through another day of survival in a world where drinking truly was a matter of life and death. The year is 1513, and across the mist-shrouded hills of Scotland, a different kind of drinking culture flourishes in the shadow of castles and keeps. Here, where highland winds carry the scent of heather and the distant sound of pipes, the consumption of fermented beverages takes on meanings that extend far beyond mere survival into the realms of honor, warfare, and royal destiny. Picture yourself in this northern realm, where mead flows like liquid gold, and the king himself drinks from horns carved with ancient symbols. As we follow the tragic tale of James IV and the liquid traditions that would accompany him to his doom at Flodden Field, James IV of Scotland, perhaps the most charismatic and cultured monarch of his generation, embodied the drinking customs of his age with all the passion and excess that marked his brief but brilliant reign. Born into a world where the sharing of drinks sealed alliances and the refusal of a cup could mean war, he understood the political and social power of alcohol in ways that modern leaders struggle to comprehend. His court at Holyrood Palace and Edinburgh Castle rang with the sounds of celebration and ceremony, where great ceremonial vessels brimmed with imported wines, Highland whiskey, and the honey wine that had sustained Celtic warriors since time immemorial. The royal household consumed beverages on a scale that reflected both the king's wealth and the expectations of hospitality that governed medieval monarchy. French wines arrived by the shipload, their precious cargo carefully transported in oak casks that bore the seals of renowned vineyards. Spanish sherries and Portuguese sweet wines filled the royal cellars, their amber depths promising exotic flavors to palates accustomed to the harsh bite of Highland spirits. But for all these imported luxuries, the drink most closely associated with Scottish royalty remained the ancient mead. That mystical marriage of honey and water that had intoxicated Celtic chieftains 1,000 years before James ever drew breath. Production of royal mead required resources and expertise that placed it firmly beyond the reach of common households. Monasteries and royal breweries employed master mead makers whose skills were guarded as jealously as state secrets. Their knowledge passed down through generations of craftsmen who understood the delicate alchemy of transforming honey into liquid. Poetry, the finest Scottish heather honey, gathered from remote highland meadows where bees fed on flowers touched by no human hand, provided the foundation for these regal beverages. Water drawn from sacred springs, blessed by Celtic saints and purified by passage through ancient stone, supplied the liquid medium for fermentation. The process of royal mead making began months before the liquid ever touched royal lips. Servants ventured into the Scottish Highlands to negotiate with wild beekeepers for their precious harvest. Picture these expeditions, laden with silver coins and traveling through landscapes that seemed untouched by time, where ancient traditions of honey gathering continued patterns established long before the Romans ever glimpsed British shores. The beekeepers themselves often lived as hermits, their knowledge of hive management and honey extraction representing skills that bordered on the supernatural in the eyes of ordinary people. Within the royal brewing chambers, the transformation of honey into mead required patience, skill, and understanding that extended far beyond simple fermentation. The honey itself underwent careful evaluation and blending, with different types providing distinct characteristics to the finished product. Clover honey created light, delicate meads suitable for ladies of the court, while darker heather honey produced robust beverages fit for warriors and kings. Wild mountain honey, rare and precious beyond measure, was reserved for the most sacred occasions and the most honored guests. The fermentation vessels used for royal mead reflected the importance of their contents through elaborate decoration and precious materials. Casks bound with silver hoops bore the royal arms carved deep into their staves, while smaller vessels, crafted from exotic woods, imported from distant lands, held experimental batches and special preparations. Some containers incorporated Celtic symbols and Christian imagery in complex patterns that spoke to the religious and cultural synthesis that characterized James's Scotland. James IV himself took personal interest in the brewing processes that supplied his court, visiting the royal breweries with the enthusiasm of a man who understood that the quality of hospitality reflected directly upon royal dignity. Contemporary accounts describe him testing various batches, offering suggestions for improvement, and engaging in detailed discussions with his master brewers about techniques and ingredients. This hands-on approach reflected both the king's natural curiosity and his understanding that excellence in such matters contributed directly to political success and diplomatic effectiveness. The diplomatic significance of royal drinking extended far beyond mere hospitality into the complex realm of international relations that governed medieval Europe. When foreign ambassadors arrived at the Scottish court, the beverages offered during their reception carried coded messages about their perceived importance, their nation's relationship with Scotland, and the intended outcomes of their missions. The finest aged meads, served in vessels of gold and silver, announced respect and desired friendship. Lesser beverages, while still of high quality, suggested more distant or formal relationships. The court ceremonies surrounding the consumption of royal beverages reflected ancient Scottish traditions adapted to the requirements of Renaissance monarchy. Cupbearer, one of the highest offices in the royal household, bore responsibility for ensuring the safety and quality of everything that passed the king's lips. This position required not only detailed knowledge of wines and spirits, but also understanding of poisons and their detection, making the cupbearer part sommelier, part food taster, and part bodyguard in a single role. The great feasts that marked significant occasions in James's reign showcased the full splendor of royal drinking culture, with hundreds of guests consuming thousands of gallons of various beverages and celebrations that lasted 4 days. Picture these magnificent events held in great halls lit by hundreds of candles, where long tables groaned under the weight of silver cups and golden goblets. The sound of toasts and pledges filled the air as nobles and courtiers participated in ritualized drinking that reinforced social hierarchies and political alliances through shared consumption of precious liquids. Military campaigns brought their own traditions of royal drinking. As the king's household traveled with portable versions of the elaborate brewing and serving equipment that characterized court life, campaign wagons carried specially designed casks and vessels that could withstand the rigors of military movement while preserving the quality of their precious contents. The royal tent itself included dedicated spaces for the storage and service of beverages, recognizing that maintaining proper hospitality remained essential even in the harsh conditions of medieval warfare. The relationship between alcohol and military leadership in James's era reflected beliefs about courage, decision-making, and divine favor that seemed foreign to modern military thinking. Moderate consumption of wine or mead before battle was thought to steady nerves and sharpen courage, while complete sobriety might suggest lack of confidence in divine protection. The king himself participated in these traditions, sharing drinks with his officers before major engagements and maintaining the ceremonial aspects of royal hospitality. Even under battlefield conditions, the brewing traditions that supplied James's court reflected the cultural synthesis that characterized Renaissance Scotland, where Celtic heritage merged with continental sophistication to create uniquely Scottish approaches to fermented beverages. Highland distilleries produced early versions of what would become Scotch whiskey, their products already displaying the distinctive characteristics that would eventually make Scottish spirits famous throughout the world. Lowland breweries experimented with continental techniques applied to local ingredients, creating ales and beers that satisfied both traditional tastes and cosmopolitan expectations. The preparation for military campaigns required careful attention to liquid supplies, as armies moved on their stomachs but fought with their courage, and both required proper hydration and morale-boosting spirits. The logistics of transporting adequate beverages for royal households on campaign challenged even the most experienced quartermasters, while the need to maintain dignity and hospitality in field conditions demanded innovative solutions to practical problems. As autumn approached in 1513, the drinking traditions that had sustained James's court through years of peace and prosperity would face their ultimate test in the muddy fields of northern England, where the sounds of battle would replace the gentle tinkling of silver cups, and where the honey wine that had sweetened so many royal celebrations would flow for the last time from the cup of Scotland's Renaissance king. The great baggage train that followed James IV's army into England carried more than weapons and provisions. It bore the liquid traditions of a nation, transported in specially crafted wagons that creaked and swayed under the weight of royal ceremony made portable. Pictured this extraordinary procession as it wound through the Scottish borderlands in late August 1513, where casks of precious mead bounced alongside barrels of Highland whiskey, French wines, and the strong ales that would sustain 25,000 Scottish warriors through what would prove to be their final campaign. The very logistics of maintaining royal drinking standards while conducting medieval warfare reveals the profound importance that alcohol held in the fabric of Renaissance military culture. The royal pavilion, erected each evening as the army made camp, represented a marvel of portable luxury that brought the ceremonial drinking traditions of Holyrood Palace into the harsh realities of military campaigning. Master craftsmen had designed this remarkable structure to transform quickly from a collection of bundled canvas and wooden poles into a silk-lined chamber worthy of receiving foreign ambassadors or hosting the war councils that would determine the fate of kingdoms. Within this temporary palace, James maintained the full panoply of royal drinking customs, understanding that the projection of strength and legitimacy required adherence to ceremonial protocols even in the midst of invasion. The king's personal cupbearer traveled with the army, his responsibilities multiplied by the challenges of field conditions and the heightened risks of assassination that accompanied military campaigns. This trusted official supervised not only the preparation and service of the king's beverages, but also the complex logistics of maintaining proper storage temperatures, preventing contamination, and ensuring adequate supplies for the duration of the campaign. His portable laboratory included testing devices for detecting poison, measuring instruments for diluting strong spirits to appropriate strengths, and the specialized knowledge necessary to maintain the quality of delicate wines and aged meads under conditions that would challenge even modern preservation techniques. The honey wine that accompanied James on his final campaign represented the culmination of years of careful preparation and planning by royal brewers who understood the symbolic importance of maintaining Celtic traditions even during continental-style warfare. These precious casks had begun their transformation in the spring of 1512, when master mead makers selected the finest Highland honey and initiated the slow fermentation process that would produce beverages worthy of a king's last supper. The timing was no coincidence. Experienced brewers understood that campaign meat required additional aging to withstand the rigors of military transport while maintaining the complex flavors that distinguished royal beverages from common soldiers' rations. The portable brewing equipment that traveled with the royal household represented engineering marvels adapted to the specific requirements of maintaining alcohol quality during military movements. Specially designed casks incorporated suspension systems that absorbed the shock of rough roads and river crossings, while innovative cooling systems used water-soaked cloth and strategic ventilation to maintain stable temperatures despite the unpredictable conditions of campaign life. Some of the most skilled craftsmen in Scotland had devoted months to creating these hybrid containers that served simultaneously as storage vessels, transportation equipment, and portable cellars capable of preserving the most delicate vintages. Under battlefield conditions, the social dynamics of drinking within James's army reflected the complex hierarchies that governed medieval Scottish society, different ranks receiving beverages appropriate to their station while maintaining the unity necessary for effective military action. Highland clan chiefs, each leading their traditional followers into battle, received treatment that acknowledged their independent status while reinforcing their loyalty to the crown. Their evening consumption of mead and whiskey in the royal presence served multiple diplomatic functions, renewing bonds of allegiance while demonstrating the king's respect for ancient traditions and contemporary realities. The lowland nobility, educated in continental fashion and equipped with the latest military technology, participated in wine-centered ceremonies that reflected their cosmopolitan sophistication while binding them to their Highland allies through shared consumption of traditional Scottish beverages. These careful protocols of inclusive drinking helped bridge cultural gaps that might otherwise have fragmented the Scottish army, creating artificial bonds of brotherhood through the ancient magic of shared intoxication. Common soldiers received their own provisions of ale and weak whiskey, their daily rations calculated to provide necessary calories and morale-boosting alcohol without compromising their fighting effectiveness or discipline. The quartermasters responsible for these vast quantities of soldiers faced logistical challenges that required careful planning and innovative solutions. River water required purification through boiling and fermentation, while local supplies demanded testing and evaluation to prevent mass poisoning of Scottish forces through contaminated beverages. The evening routine of the royal camp included elaborate drinking ceremonies that served both religious and political purposes. James sought divine blessing for his cause, while reinforcing the loyalty of his followers through magnificent displays of royal generosity. Picture these twilight gatherings, where the golden light of sunset illuminated silk pavilions and gleaming armor, while the sounds of pipes and harps provided musical accompaniment to the ancient ritual of shared consumption. The king himself moved among his officers and allies, personally offering drinks from vessels that carried centuries of Scottish history in their carved symbols and precious materials. The strategic implications of maintaining proper drinking protocols during military campaigns extended beyond mere ceremony into the practical realm of intelligence gathering and diplomatic communication. Enemy agents might infiltrate Scottish camps, but their unfamiliarity with traditional drinking customs could betray their presence to observing guards and officers. Conversely, Scottish spies operating behind English lines needed detailed knowledge of enemy drinking habits to maintain their disguises and gather crucial information about English military plans and capabilities. The religious observances that accompanied military drinking reflected the complex spiritual landscape of Renaissance Scotland, where Christian doctrine coexisted with older Celtic traditions in patterns that varied according to regional custom and personal belief. Army chaplains blessed the evening wine while Highland seers read omens in the foam of fermenting mead, their parallel spiritual practices reflecting the cultural synthesis that characterized James's kingdom. These dual traditions would prove particularly poignant as the Scottish army approached its final battle, with prayers and prophecies offering conflicting messages about the campaign's likely outcome. The medical aspects of campaign drinking involved careful attention to the health benefits and risks associated with alcohol consumption under military stress. Army physicians understood that moderate drinking could steady nerves before battle, while providing essential nutrition to men facing physical hardships. But they also recognized the dangers of excessive consumption that might compromise judgment or fighting ability. The balance between therapeutic and recreational drinking required constant monitoring and adjustment based on weather conditions, available food, supplies, the proximity of enemy forces. The international dimension of James's drinking customs created opportunities for both diplomacy and miscommunication as the Scottish army moved through territories with different alcohol traditions and social expectations. Local English populations might interpret Scottish drinking patterns as signs of barbarism or sophistication, depending on their own cultural backgrounds and political loyalties. These perceptions could influence the availability of supplies, the cooperation of local guides, and the intelligence information that flowed to both Scottish and English commanders. As the Scottish forces approached the fateful field of Flodden in early September 1513, the drinking traditions that had sustained James through his reign and his army through its march would face their ultimate test in the crucible of battle, where the honey wine that had celebrated so many victories would soon mingle with Scottish blood in the muddy soil of Northumberland, and where the king, who had maintained royal dignity through portable ceremony, would find that no amount of mead could wash away the bitter taste of military disaster. The morning of September 9th, 1513, dawned gray and cold over the rolling hills of Northumberland, where the mist clung to the valleys like the breath of ghosts, and the very air seemed heavy with impending doom. In the Scottish camp, the final rituals of royal drinking unfolded with the same ceremonial precision that had marked James IV's reign, though those who participated could not have known they were witnessing the end of an era. Picture this last morning, where the king's tent glowed with candlelight against the pale dawn, and the sound of liquid being poured into precious vessels mingled with the distant clatter of armor and the nervous whispers of men preparing for battle. The royal cupbearer moved through his familiar routines with hands that betrayed no tremor, though his heart must have understood what his mind refused to acknowledge. The honey wine that filled the king's ceremonial chalice had traveled from Highland meadows through months of careful fermentation to reach this moment, its amber depths reflecting the flickering flames that would soon be extinguished forever. James himself lifted the vessel with the same steady grace that had marked thousands of such moments throughout his reign. the precious liquid touching his lips for what would prove to be the final time in a life dedicated to the marriage of tradition and ambition. The other Scottish nobles participated in their own morning rituals of consumption. Cage, according to his rank and tradition, Highland chiefs shared whiskey from carved horns, while lowland lords sipped French wine from silver cups. These liquid ceremonies served to steady nerves and reinforce bonds of loyalty that would soon be tested in the crucible of medieval warfare, where personal courage mattered more than political sophistication, and where the drinking customs of a lifetime would be reduced to memory in the space of a few bloody hours. The common soldiers received their own morning rations of weak ale and diluted whiskey, their portions calculated to provide courage without compromising their fighting effectiveness. Quartermasters moved through the ranks with barrels and ladles, dispensing liquid courage to men who understood that this day would likely be their last, but who faced that knowledge with the stoic acceptance that characterized their harsh northern heritage. The ale they consumed had been brewed in Scottish monasteries and Highland villages, carrying within its fermented essence the prayers and hopes of an entire nation. The English army, positioned on the opposite ridge, followed their own drinking traditions as they prepared for the battle that would determine the balance of power between two kingdoms. Their morning ale came from English breweries and reflected different traditions of grain selection and fermentation techniques, yet served the same fundamental purpose of providing liquid courage and essential nutrition to men about to risk everything in service to their king. The contrast between Scottish mead and Highland whiskey against English ale and French wine represented more than mere preference. It embodied the cultural divide that had brought these armies to this fateful confrontation. As the morning wore on and the two armies maneuvered for advantage, the drinking vessels and brewing equipment that had accompanied the Scottish forces became increasingly irrelevant obstacles to military efficiency. The portable mead cellars and collapsible serving tables that had maintained royal dignity during the march south now represented dangerous encumbrances that might slow retreat or compromise tactical flexibility. Yet James could not bring himself to abandon these symbols of his royal identity, understanding instinctively that to do so would represent a surrender of the very legitimacy that justified his presence on this foreign battlefield. The tactical situation that developed throughout the day reflected the fundamental differences between medieval and Renaissance approaches to warfare, the traditional Scottish courage and Highland ferocity confronting English artillery and professional discipline. The liquid traditions that had sustained both armies through their preparations would prove inadequate to bridge the technological gap that separated these two military systems, though the individual bravery inspired by ceremonial drinking would create moments of heroism that would echo through centuries of song and story. The afternoon brought increasing desperation to the Scottish position as English cannons found their range and began to tear gaps in the Highland ranks with methodical precision. The sounds of battle, the crash of steel on steel, the screams of wounded men and horses, the thunder of gunpowder weapons gradually overwhelmed the gentler sounds of military camp life. No longer could one hear the splash of liquid being poured or the clink of metal cups, as survival replaced ceremony and the ancient rituals of hospitality yielded to the harsh demands of medieval combat. James himself fought in the front ranks with the personal courage that had characterized his entire reign. His presence among the common soldiers, representing the ultimate expression of the egalitarian drinking traditions that had bound his diverse army together during the march south. The king, who had shared mead with Highland chiefs and wine with lowland nobles, now shared the risks of battle with the humblest Scottish farmer, its royal blood flowing as freely as that of any common warrior when English weapons found their mark. The collapse of the Scottish line came with the brutal suddenness that characterized medieval warfare. Its tactical disadvantage, combined with technological inferiority, to transform an organized army into a collection of desperate individuals fighting for their lives. The careful hierarchies that had governed drinking privileges during the campaign dissolved in the democracy of death, as nobles and commoners alike fell beneath English weapons without regard for their social station or the quality of beverages they had consumed at the morning meal. The death of James IV occurred somewhere in the chaotic melee that marked the final collapse of Scottish resistance. His body found later among the heaps of dead that littered the muddy field. The king, who had lifted ceremonial cups before thousands of admiring courtiers, died in anonymous violence, his identity discovered only through the royal rings that still adorned his lifeless fingers. The precious chalice from which he had drunk his final cup of honey wine lay somewhere in the trampled mud of Flodden Field, its golden surface tarnished with blood and its ceremonial significance reduced to scrap metal in the calculus of battlefield. Salvage. The Scottish camp, abandoned in the panic of military disaster, presented English soldiers with a treasure trove of exotic beverages and precious serving vessels that represented the accumulated wealth and tradition of a royal household. Highland mead and aged whiskey, French wines, and ceremonial cups all became spoils of war for English soldiers who understood their monetary value but could never comprehend their cultural significance. The portable breweries and collapsible feast tables that had maintained royal dignity during the campaign were broken up for firewood or abandoned to rust in the English rain. The honey wine that had traveled from Scottish meadows to meet its destiny on this foreign battlefield absorbed into the earth of Northumberland, sweetness mixing with blood and tears to create a bitter harvest that would nourish English soil for generations to come. The mead that should have celebrated Scottish victory instead became a libation for Scottish defeat, poured out not in ceremony but in the careless waste of military disaster. The aftermath of Flodden brought profound changes to Scottish drinking culture as the survivors returned home bearing news of catastrophic defeat and royal death. The elaborate court ceremonies that had centered around James IV's personal participation could not survive his absence. While the financial costs of the lost campaign eliminated resources that might have maintained traditional hospitality on the previous scale, the golden age of Scottish Renaissance drinking culture died with James on the muddy field of Flodden. Its sophisticated blend of Celtic tradition and continental refinement giving way to simpler, more austere practices dictated by political uncertainty and economic necessity. The English triumph at Flodden brought its own changes to the drinking traditions of Henry VIII's court. As the spoils of Scottish defeat enriched English cellars with exotic beverages and precious vessels that carried within them the ghosts of their former owners, Highland mead appeared on English tables as a curiosity, its complex flavors providing English palates with their first taste of Scottish brewing expertise. French wines that had been destined for Scottish celebration instead graced English victory feasts. Their ironic journey from Scottish camp to English table, reflecting the unpredictable nature of medieval warfare. The symbolic implications of Flodden's outcome extended far beyond military conquest into the realm of cultural domination. English victory seemed to validate English drinking traditions over their Scottish counterparts. The defeat of James IV represented not merely the death of a king, but the suppression of an entire approach to royal hospitality and ceremonial consumption that had distinguished Scottish court culture from its English counterpart. The portable feast halls and traveling breweries that had maintained Scottish royal dignity during the campaign became emblematic of the impractical sophistication that English observers blamed for Scottish military failure. The personal tragedies hidden within the larger disaster of Flodden included the stories of individual brewers, cup-bearers, and serving men whose skills and knowledge perished alongside their royal master. These craftsmen had devoted their lives to perfecting the liquid arts that supported royal dignity, expertise representing generations of accumulated wisdom about fermentation, preservation, and ceremonial presentation. Their deaths on foreign soil marked the end of craft traditions that had taken centuries to develop and could never be fully recovered. As the sun set on September 9th, 1513, it illuminated a battlefield where Scottish drinking traditions lay, as dead as the king who had embodied them, their golden vessels tarnished with blood and their honey wine sorbed into earth that would remember this day of sorrow for centuries to come. The mead tent that had sheltered royal ceremony throughout the campaign stood empty and abandoned, its silk walls fluttering in the evening breeze like the banners of a defeated army, while somewhere in the gathering darkness, the last drops of Highland honey wine seeped into foreign soil, carrying with them the dreams and aspirations of a Renaissance king whose ambitions had exceeded his grasp. 4 centuries later, in the narrow streets of York, where medieval timber frames leaned precariously over cobblestones worn smooth by countless feet, modern archaeologists work with careful brushes and measuring tools to uncover the drinking secrets of the Tudor era. Picture yourself descending into these excavated cellars, where the musty scent of ancient earth mingles with the ghostly aromas of long-banished ales, and where every fragment of pottery and every stained bone tells a story of liquid consumption that extends far beyond simple refreshment into the realm of survival, celebration, and the eternal human struggle against mortality. The archaeological site known as Betrayal, once home to the Vicar's Corral of York Minster, has yielded treasures that transformed our understanding of drinking culture in the 16th century. Here, beneath layers of accumulated earth and debris, lie the physical remains of tavern life frozen in time like insects preserved in amber. The excavation teams work with the patience of monks, their careful excavation revealing layer upon layer of discarded vessels, animal bones, and organic matter that speaks to patterns of consumption, both familiar and startlingly foreign to modern sensibilities. The pottery sherds that emerge from the ancient soil tell stories of their own, each fragment bearing the fingerprints of potters who lived and died 400 years ago. These ceramic vessels once held the ales and wines that sustained Tudor York, their shapes and decorations revealing information about social status, trade relationships, and the aesthetic preferences of drinkers whose names have been forgotten by history. The larger fragments show evidence of repeated repair, their cracks mended with lead or iron staples that speak to the precious nature of proper drinking. Vessels in an age when replacements required considerable expense and effort. The animal bones scattered throughout the archaeological layers present. A more complex picture of tavern life than simple historical accounts might suggest. These are not merely the remains of tavern meals, though food and drink intertwined in Tudor establishments with an intimacy that modern separation of restaurant and bar cannot capture. Many bones show evidence of specific butchering techniques designed to extract marrow for brewing purposes, while others display gnaw marks and weathering patterns that suggest they served multiple functions within the tavern economy before finding their final rest in midden heaps and waste pits. The chemical analysis of soil samples from these excavated areas reveals traces of organic compounds that provide direct evidence of the beverages consumed on these sites centuries ago. Alcohol residues persist in clay vessels and wooden containers with remarkable tenacity, are molecular signatures allowing modern scientists to identify specific types of fermented beverages and even estimate their alcohol content in flavoring ingredients. These scientific detective techniques transform archaeology from simple artifact recovery into chemical time travel, permitting direct analysis of the actual liquids that touched Tudor lips in these very locations. The distribution patterns of drinking-related artifacts throughout the site reveal social hierarchies and economic relationships that illuminate the complex world of Tudor tavern culture. The finest pottery concentrates in areas associated with private rooms and upper-story chambers, where wealthy merchants and minor nobility could drink in relative privacy while maintaining their social dignity. Common drinking areas yield simpler vessels in greater quantities. Their sturdy construction and utilitarian design reflecting the practical needs of working-class customers who valued durability over decoration. The preservation conditions in York's anaerobic soil have created remarkable opportunities for recovering organic materials that normally decompose within decades of burial. Leather drinking vessels, wooden serving implements, and even fragments of textile that once filtered ales emerge from the earth with startling clarity. Their surfaces bearing the stains and wear patterns that speak to intensive use in active tavern environments. These preserved organics provide tangible connections to the hands that crafted and used them, bridging the centuries. Through the universal human experience of lifting liquids to one's lips, the stratigraphic analysis of the tavern layers reveals patterns of expansion and decline that mirrored the broader economic and social changes that affected Tudor England. Periods of prosperity show increased deposition of high-quality pottery and exotic imported vessels, while times of hardship manifest in layers dominated by repaired local pottery and evidence of resource conservation. The archaeological record thus becomes a barometer of regional economic health, with drinking vessel quality serving as an index of disposable income and social stability. The botanical remains recovered from tavern contexts provide direct evidence of the ingredients used in Tudor brewing and the seasonal patterns that governed alcohol production and consumption. Charred barley grains, hop flowers preserved in waterlogged conditions, and exotic spice fragments tell stories of trade networks that brought flavoring agents from across Europe and beyond to enhance the ales consumed in these northern English establishments. Pollen analysis reveals the agricultural landscape that surrounded Tudor York, while seed remains indicate which plants provided flavoring and medicinal additives to locally produced beverages. The human remains, occasionally discovered in tavern contexts, present some of the most intriguing mysteries in Tudor archaeology. Their presence raises questions about the relationship between drinking establishments and the broader patterns of life and death in medieval urban environments. Some burials clearly predate tavern construction and represent earlier land use, while others appear contemporary with tavern operations and suggest complex relationships between commercial establishments and community burial practices that challenge modern assumptions about the separation of sacred and secular spaces. The metalwork recovered from tavern excavations includes not only the expected pewter vessels and copper serving implements, but also specialized tools and equipment that illuminate the technical aspects of Tudor brewing and serving. Bronze strainers, iron barrel hoops, and lined storage containers revealed the technological sophistication that supported commercial alcohol production. Personal items like belt fittings and coin deposits suggest the social and economic relationships that centered around tavern life. The documentary evidence that survives in York's archives provides context for the archaeological discoveries, as wills, property deeds, and legal records name specific tavern keepers and describe the establishments where these artifacts were used. The combination of written records and physical evidence creates a remarkably complete picture of individual taverns and their proprietors, allowing archaeologists to connect specific artifacts with known historical figures and documented events. This integration of historical and archaeological evidence transforms anonymous pottery shards into personal possessions with known owners and specific histories. The international character of York's tavern culture becomes apparent through the imported pottery and exotic vessel types that appear throughout the archaeological record. Italian Renaissance ceramics, German stoneware, and Low Countries redware testified to trade networks that brought continental drinking customs and technologies to northern England. These imported vessels often show evidence of adaptation to local brewing traditions, with modifications that reflect the creative synthesis of foreign influence and domestic practice that characterized Tudor material culture. The evidence for tavern entertainment and social activities emerges through specialized artifacts that serve functions beyond simple drinking. Gaming pieces, musical instruments, and decorative objects suggest that Tudor taverns functioned as community centers, where alcohol consumption accompanied a wide range of social and recreational activities. The spatial distribution of these entertainment-related artifacts reveals till different areas within tavern complexes serve distinct social functions. From quiet corners suited to private conversation to open spaces designed for group activities and public entertainment, the seasonal patterns visible in the archaeological Crete reflect the agricultural cycles that govern brewing schedules and the availability of different beverages throughout the year. Winter layers show evidence of stronger ales and imported wines, while summer deposits contain more remains of lighter beverages and fresh ingredients. These seasonal variations in the archaeological record mirror the documented patterns of Tudor brewing while providing independent confirmation of historical accounts describing the rhythm of annual alcohol production and its consumption. The artistic and decorative elements preserved on drinking vessels and tavern furnishings reflect the aesthetic values and cultural aspirations of Tudor drinkers, whose consumption patterns expressed personal identity and social ambition through material choices, relic, decorations, religious symbols, artistic motifs, transform utilitarian drinking implements into expressions of personal belief, political loyalty, and cultural affiliation. The archaeological record thus preserves not only the functional aspects of drinking culture, but also its role in the expression of individual and community identity. The preservation challenges faced by excavated drinking-related artifacts require specialized conservation techniques that can stabilize fragile materials while maintaining their research value for future analysis. Organic materials like leather and wood demand immediate attention to prevent decomposition, while metalwork requires careful cleaning to remove corrosion without destroying surface details. The conservation process itself becomes a form of archaeological research. Its cleaning and stabilization procedures reveal construction techniques and use patterns invisible to initial excavation. Beneath the narrow alleyways of Guttram Gate and Stone Gate, where tourists now purchase souvenirs and sample modern ales. The medieval refuse pits of York's taverns hold secrets that challenge every assumption about Tudor drinking culture. Picture yourself in the conservation laboratory, where these archaeological treasures receive their first careful examination, where fragments of bone and pottery lie arranged on sterile tables, like words in an ancient language, waiting for translation. Here, under the gentle light of examination lamps, the detritus of 500-year-old celebrations tells stories of consumption patterns, so complex and sophisticated that they transform our understanding of what it meant to drink in the 16th century. The animal bones that emerge from York's tavern excavations represent far more than simple waste from kitchen operations, their surfaces bearing evidence of specialized processing techniques that reveal the intimate connection between food and drink production in Tudor establishments. Cattle bones show distinctive cut marks that indicate careful extraction of marrow for brewing additives, while pig bones display evidence of systematic processing for blood sausages that were consumed alongside ales as complete nutritional packages. The sheep bones tell different stories. Their small size and delicate structure suggesting they provided ingredients for the clarifying agents that transformed cloudy ales to crystal clear beverages suitable for presentation to discriminating customers. The chemical analysis of bone surfaces reveals traces of specific brewing ingredients that have survived centuries of burial in York's alkaline soil. Residues of hops, herbs, and exotic spices cling to bone fragments with remarkable persistence. Their molecular signatures providing direct evidence of the complex flavoring systems that distinguished one tavern's offerings from another. These chemical fingerprints allow researchers to reconstruct actual recipes and brewing techniques with scientific precision, transforming archaeological investigation into a form of molecular gastronomy that bridges the centuries through shared chemical processes. the distribution patterns of bone fragments throughout different areas of excavated tavern sites reveal social hierarchies and economic relationships that illuminate the complex world of Tudor hospitality. The finest cuts of meat, evidenced by bones from premium portions of cattle and sheep, concentrate in areas associated with private dining rooms where wealthy merchants and minor nobility could consume expensive beverages alongside equally costly food. Common areas yield bones from cheaper cuts and organ meats. Their preparation methods suggesting efficient utilization of every part of slaughtered animals to maximize nutritional value and minimize waste. The seasonal variations visible in bone deposits reflect the agricultural and brewing cycles that governed Tudor tavern operations throughout the year. Spring layers contain bones from young animals slaughtered at weaning time, their tender meat paired with fresh ales brewed from the previous year's grain stores. Summer deposits show evidence of preserved meats and stronger ales designed to last through the hot months when fresh brewing became dangerous due to contamination risks. Autumn bones come from mature animals slaughtered before winter feeding became necessary. Their rich meat accompanying the harvest ales that celebrated successful grain collection in preparation for the lean months ahead. The evidence for tavern entertainment and social activities emerges through specialized bone artifacts that served functions beyond simple nutrition. Gaming pieces carved from sheep knuckle bones. Musical instruments fashioned from hollow bird bones, and decorative objects created from polished cattle ribs suggest that Tudor taverns function as community centers where alcohol consumption accompanied a wide range of recreational and cultural activities. The artistic quality of these bone artifacts reveals skilled craftsmanship that elevated utilitarian objects into expressions of creativity and cultural identity. The international character of York's tavern culture becomes apparent through exotic animal bones that testify to trade networks bringing foreign ingredients and culinary traditions to northern England. Bones from Mediterranean fish species, tropical bird fragments, and even occasional whalebone pieces indicate that the most sophisticated taverns offered exotic delicacies alongside imported wines and spirits. These foreign bone fragments often show evidence of special preparation, techniques that suggest experimentation with continental cooking methods adapted to local brewing traditions and customer preferences. The preservation of organic materials in York's waterlogged deposits has created unprecedented opportunities for recovering camped evidence of brewing equipment and serving implements that normally decompose within decades of burial. Wooden brewing paddles still bear the stains of countless stirring sessions, their surfaces impregnated with residues that reveal the specific grains and additives used in Tudor ale production. Leather drinking vessels emerge from the soil with their original flexibility intact, their surfaces showing wear patterns that indicate preferred gripping positions and preferred drinking angles that connect modern researchers to the physical gestures of Tudor consumption. The microscopic analysis of bone surfaces reveals evidence of specific diseases and nutritional deficiencies that affected animals consumed in Tudor taverns, providing indirect evidence of the health conditions that influenced both food quality and customer well-being. Bone pathologies indicate the presence of infectious diseases that can be transmitted from animals to humans through improperly prepared meat, while nutritional deficiencies visible in animal skeletons suggest seasonal variations in feed quality that affected the taste and nutritional value of tavern offerings. These health indicators help researchers understand the medical risks and benefits associated with Tudor drinking culture. The stratigraphic relationships between bone deposits and other archaeological materials provide chronological frameworks that allow precise dating of specific tavern operations and renovation episodes. Coin deposits associated with particular bone layers establish terminus post-quem dates for renovation activities, while pottery styles help refine chronological sequences and identify periods of prosperity or decline in tavern operations. The integration of multiple dating methods creates detailed timelines that transform archaeological investigation from simple artifact recovery into historical reconstruction with temporal precision. The evidence for brewing innovation and technological development appears in specialized bone tools and modified equipment that suggests active research and development within the Tudor alcohol industry. Bone strainers, carved with intricate perforation patterns, specialized stirring implements designed for specific brewing operations, and modified serving tools indicate that tavern keepers constantly sought to improve their products and techniques. These innovative bone artifacts provide evidence for the dynamic and competitive nature of Tudor drinking culture that drove continuous improvement in brewing and serving technologies, the social tensions and economic conflicts that surrounded tavern operation become visible through evidence of deliberate destruction and careful burial that reflects the complex legal and political environment surrounding alcohol production and sales. Some bone deposits show evidence of hasty concealment, their arrangements suggesting emergency burial during periods of religious or political persecution when tavern operations faced official scrutiny. Other deposits reveal careful organization and a systematic disposal that indicates normal business operations conducted within accepted legal frameworks. The religious dimensions of tavern culture appear through bone artifacts that bear carved religious symbols and evidence of ceremonial treatment that suggests complex relationships between secular drinking establishments and sacred traditions. Bones carved with crosses, religious inscriptions, and holy symbols indicate that taverns served functions beyond simple commercial hospitality, potentially including roles in religious festivals and community celebrations that required accommodation between church doctrine and popular drinking customs. The quality and sophistication of religious bone carvings suggest that skilled artisans created these pieces for specific ceremonial purposes rather than casual decoration. The evidence for seasonal brewing patterns and storage techniques emerges through bone artifacts that served specialized functions in alcohol production and preservation. Bone containers designed for specific brewing operations, specialized storage implements, and modified serving tools indicate that tavern keepers developed sophisticated systems for managing seasonal variations in brewing conditions and ingredient availability. These seasonal adaptations suggest that Tudor brewing culture achieved remarkable sophistication in managing the challenges of pre-industrial alcohol production. The social networks and community relationships that centered around tavern life become visible through bone artifacts that bear personal markings and evidence of individual ownership or customization. Personal name inscriptions, family crests, and individual identification marks suggest that regular customers maintained personal drinking vessels and specialized equipment at their preferred taverns. These personalized bone artifacts indicate that Tudor taverns functioned as social clubs or long-term relationships developed between proprietors and customers through shared appreciation of specific beverage qualities and brewing techniques. The conservation challenges presented by excavated bone materials require specialized treatment protocols that can stabilize fragile organic matrices while preserving their research value for future analysis. Bone artifacts often emerge from archaeological contexts in various states of preservation, with some requiring immediate consolidation to prevent disintegration, while others need careful cleaning to remove centuries of accumulated soil and corrosion. Products. The conservation process itself reveals information about original manufacturing techniques and use patterns that contribute to our understanding of Tudor material culture and technological capabilities. In the climate-controlled storage rooms of York Archaeological Trust, hundreds of pottery fragments rest in acid-free boxes like pieces of a vast jigsaw puzzle that, when assembled, revealed the intimate details of Tudor drinking culture with startling clarity. Picture yourself in these quiet repositories where the fragments of drinking vessels broken 5 centuries ago await patient Reconstruction by specialists whose skilled hands can read the stories written in clay and glaze. These ceramic sherds, stained with the residues of countless ales and wines, represent more than mere archaeological specimens. They are the physical embodiment of human relationships, of social aspirations, and the eternal quest for beauty that transforms utilitarian objects to expressions of cultural identity. The pottery assemblages recovered from York's tavern sites represent the most comprehensive collection of Tudor drinking vessels ever discovered. In England, the remarkable preservation allowing detailed analysis of manufacturing techniques, decorative styles, and use patterns that illuminate every aspect of 16th century alcohol consumption. The ceramic fragments range from crude earthenware cups used by common laborers to elaborate maiolica vessels imported from Italian workshops. Their quality and decoration reflecting the social hierarchies that govern access to fine beverages and beautiful serving implements. Each fragment tells its own story of creation, use, and ultimate disposal, while collectively they reveal the complex world of Tudor material culture with unprecedented detail. The manufacturing techniques visible in the pottery assemblage demonstrate the remarkable skill and innovation that characterized Tudor ceramic production. Local potters adapted continental techniques to English clay sources while developing distinctive regional styles that reflected local preferences and available materials. The wheel marks visible on vessel surfaces reveal the speed and rhythm of potter's wheels, while tool marks indicate the specialized implements used to shape, smooth, and decorate finished pieces. Firing temperatures can be estimated from ceramic hardness and color variations, revealing the technological capabilities of different workshops and the quality control measures that ensured consistent product standards. The decorative schemes applied to drinking vessels reflect the aesthetic, values, and cultural aspirations of Tudor consumers, whose choice of pottery expressed personal identity and social position through visual symbols that communicated complex messages about religious belief, political loyalty, and economic status. Heraldic designs identify vessels associated with specific noble households, while religious motifs suggest the spiritual concerns that influenced everyday drinking practices. Trade guild symbols appear on vessels associated with particular crafts and professions, indicating that occupational identity influenced even the most intimate aspects of daily consumption. The chemical analysis of ceramic glazes and clay bodies provides direct evidence of trade networks and technological exchange that connected York's pottery industry to centers of innovation throughout Europe and beyond. Lead isotope analysis reveals the geographic sources of raw materials used in glaze production, while trace element concentrations indicate the specific techniques and additives employed by different workshops. These scientific analyses transform pottery fragments into documents of economic history that reveal the complex commercial relationships underlying Tudor material culture. The evidence for specialized vessel types designed for specific beverages challenges modern assumptions about the uniformity of Tudor drinking practices, revealing instead a sophisticated system of matching appropriate containers to particular liquids based on flavor enhancement, temperature control, and social protocol. Tall, narrow vessels designed for wine service show different surface treatments from broad, shallow cups intended for ale consumption, while specialized forms developed for specific occasions demonstrate the ceremonial importance of proper presentation. In Tudor hospitality, the diversity of vessel forms indicates that Tudor drinkers possessed detailed knowledge of how a container's design affected beverage quality and social perception. The repair evidence visible on many pottery fragments testifies to the precious nature of proper drinking vessels in an economy where replacement costs represented significant household expenses. Lead rivets, iron staples, and ceramic patches reveal the lengths to which Tudor consumers would go to preserve damaged vessels, rather than purchase new ones. Some fragments show evidence of multiple repair episodes, their surfaces bearing the scars of decades of careful maintenance that speak to the emotional and economic value attached to particular pieces. These repair patterns also reveal information about the skills and tools available for ceramic restoration in Tudor households. The spatial distribution of different pottery types throughout excavated tavern sites reveals the social geography of Tudor drinking establishments, where different areas cater to customers of varying economic status and social pretension. Fine imported pottery concentrates in areas associated with private rooms and upper-story chambers, where wealthy merchants and minor nobility could consume expensive beverages in settings that reinforced their social position. Common areas yield simpler vessels in greater quantities, their sturdy construction and minimal decoration, reflecting the practical needs of working-class customers who value durability and affordability over aesthetic refinement. The seasonal patterns visible in pottery deposition reflect the agricultural and brewing cycles that govern Tudor tavern operations throughout the year, with different vessel types appearing in deposits associated with specific times of year. Thick-walled vessels appear in winter layers, their design optimized for containing hot, spiced beverages that provided warmth during cold months. Lighter, more decorative pieces concentrate in summer deposits, their delicate construction and elaborate decorations suggesting use for special occasions and celebrations that coincided with favorable weather and abundant harvest seasons. The evidence for pottery production and distribution networks reveals the economic relationships that supported Tudor ceramic industries and the commercial strategies that brought finished vessels to tavern customers throughout northern England. Kiln, waste, and pottery tools found in urban contexts indicate local production centers, while the distribution patterns of distinctive ceramic styles reveal trade routes and market relationships that connected rural workshops with urban consumers. Some pottery shows evidence of standardized production techniques that suggest proto-industrial organization within the Tudor. The ceramic industry. The international character of York's pottery assemblage becomes apparent through imported ceramics that testify to the cosmopolitan nature of Tudor drinking culture and the global trade networks that supplied luxury goods to English consumers. Italian maiolica vessels bear elaborate narrative scenes and heraldic decorations that transformed everyday drinking into participation in Renaissance artistic culture, while German stoneware provided technological innovations that influenced local pottery development. French ceramics introduced distinctive glazing techniques and decorative motifs that reflect the cultural exchange accompanying diplomatic and commercial relationships. The preservation of organic residues within pottery vessels provides direct evidence of the actual beverages consumed in Tudor taverns, with chemical analysis revealing specific ingredients and preparation methods that bridge the gap between archaeological investigation and historical reconstruction. Alcohol residues persist in ceramic matrices with remarkable tenacity, their molecular signatures allowing identification of specific beverage types and even estimation of alcohol content and flavoring ingredients. These chemical fingerprints transform pottery fragments into recipe books that preserve Tudor brewing knowledge with scientific precision. The artistic quality of decorative pottery demonstrates the sophisticated aesthetic sensibilities that influenced Tudor material culture, as skilled artisans created vessels that satisfied practical needs while expressing complex visual narratives and symbolic meanings. Religious scenes painted on drinking cups connected daily consumption to spiritual concerns, while secular narratives provided entertainment and cultural commentary that enriched the social experience of tavern life. The technical skill required for such elaborate decoration indicates the presence of highly trained artists working within the pottery industry to create objects that transcended utilitarian function. The evidence for specialized ceramic technologies adapted to brewing and serving requirements reveals the innovative spirit that characterized Tudor material culture. As potters developed new techniques and vessel forms to meet the specific needs of alcohol production and consumption, specialized brewing vessels with internal strainers, serving pitchers with precise pouring capabilities, storage containers with improved sealing systems, demonstrate the technological sophistication that supported commercial alcohol production. These innovations often combine traditional techniques with new ideas, ported from continental workshops. The experimental archaeology programs that attempt to recreate Tudor pottery production techniques provide insights into the skills and knowledge required for ceramic manufacturing while testing hypotheses about ancient technologies and production methods. Modern potters, working with period-appropriate tools and techniques, discovered the practical challenges that faced their Tudor predecessors, while scientific analysis of experimental products helps validate interpretations of archaeological evidence. These hands-on investigations bridge the gap between theoretical knowledge and practical KI's understanding of historical craftsmanship. The digital documentation and analysis of pottery assemblages employs advanced imaging and measurement techniques that capture details invisible to conventional archaeological recording methods. Three-dimensional scanning preserves precise information about vessel forms and decorative details, while enabling virtual reconstruction of complete vessels from Rieg, Malm, Cella. Because it was far for Melez. Because I'm gonna start out by going to Starbucks. Melez. Three-dimensional scanning preserves M.E. to list Melez, Cella, Melez, Melest, Cella, Melez, Melez, while NT's Melez, 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 N, Melez, S, Melez, S, with as, Melez, S, with as, to men I. Fragmentary remains. Database systems integrate information from multiple sites and collections to support comprehensive studies of Tudor ceramic traditions and their evolution over time. The educational and public interpretation of pottery. Guests communicate the significance of archaeological research to broader audiences while preserving cultural heritage for future generations. Museum displays and educational programs use pottery artifacts to illustrate the daily life experiences of Tudor people, while digital resources make detailed information about ceramic collections accessible to researchers and interested members of the public worldwide. These interpretation efforts ensure that the knowledge gained through archaeological investigation contributes to broader understanding of human, cultural development, and historical change. In the Great Hall of Hampton Court Palace, where Henry VIII once held court with a magnificence that dazzled European ambassadors, the drinking customs of Tudor nobility transformed simple consumption into elaborate theatrical performances, where every sip carried political meaning and every vessel told stories of power, wealth, and divine favor. Picture yourself in this gilded world of the 1530s, where the sound of silver touching crystal mingles with the rustle of silk and velvet, and where the act of drinking becomes a carefully choreographed dance of diplomacy, hierarchy, and display that reveals the profound differences between royal consumption and the humble. Ill-sipping of common households we have already explored. The royal banquets of Henry VIII's court represented the pinnacle of Tudor drinking culture, where the accumulated wealth of a kingdom supported hospitality on a scale that challenged the imagination and demonstrated king's power to foreign observers who carried reports of such magnificence back to their own courts. These were not mere meals, but state occasions where the quality of wine, the artistry of vessels, and the precision of service communicated messages about royal authority, national prosperity, and divine blessing that extended far beyond the simple satisfaction of hunger and thirst. The logistics alone required months of planning and coordination, as royal officials arranged for the procurement, transport, preparation of beverages that would satisfy the expectations of the most sophisticated palates in Europe. The vessels employed for royal drinking represented the finest achievements of European craftsmanship, their precious materials and elaborate decoration, transforming utilitarian objects, the symbols of royal magnificence that awed subjects and impressed foreign visitors. Golden goblets, encrusted with gemstones, caught candlelight and through rainbow patterns across tapestried walls, while silver gilt cups bearing the royal arms announced the divine authority that legitimized Tudor rule. Venetian crystal glasses, so delicate they seemed to capture light itself, demonstrated the international trade networks that brought luxury goods from across Europe to serve English royal appetites. Each vessel told its own story of artistic achievement and economic power, their collective display creating an overwhelming impression of wealth and sophistication. The procurement of beverages for royal banquets required resources and expertise that reflected the global reach of Tudor diplomacy and trade. As royal agents scoured Europe for wines worthy of serving two kings and emperors, the finest French vintages from Burgundy and Bordeaux arrived in specially marked casks, their precious contents monitored and protected throughout the dangerous journey from vineyard to royal table. Spanish sherries and Portuguese sweet wines added exotic flavors to the royal cellar, while German Rhenish wines provided the crisp, clean tastes that complemented elaborate feast courses. Italian wines, prized for their association with classical antiquity and Renaissance sophistication, graced the tables when learned conversation and cultural display formed part of the evening's entertainment. The serving rituals that governed royal drinking created hierarchical displays of unprecedented complexity, where the order of service, the quality of vessels, and the type of beverage offered communicated precise messages about royal favor, political alliances, and social status. Within the intricate world of court politics, the royal cupbearer, one of the highest officers of the household, possessed knowledge and responsibilities that extended far beyond simple service into the realms of diplomacy, security, and ceremonial protocol. His understanding of precedents, his skill in reading royal moods, and his ability to navigate the treacherous waters of court politics made him one of the most influential figures in the royal household. The economic impact of royal drinking. Customs rippled throughout the English economy as the massive expenditures required for court hospitality supported craftsmen, merchants, and suppliers from across the kingdom and beyond. Silversmiths and goldsmiths competed for royal commissions that could establish their reputations and secure their fortunes, while wine merchants developed sophisticated networks for procuring and transporting the exotic beverages that graced royal tables. The employment generated by court drinking customs supported entire communities of specialized workers whose skills contributed to England's growing reputation for luxury craftsmanship and commercial sophistication. The artistic achievements represented by royal drinking vessels pushed the boundaries of contemporary craftsmanship and established new standards of excellence that influenced decorative arts throughout Europe. Royal commissions provided opportunities for innovative artists to experiment with new techniques and materials, their creations serving as prototypes for luxury goods that found markets among wealthy merchants and foreign nobility. The stylistic innovations developed for royal service influenced broader aesthetic trends and contributed to the evolution of decorative arts that characterized the Renaissance period. The security concerns that surrounded royal drinking required elaborate precautions and specialized personnel whose responsibilities extended far beyond simple food service into the realm of personal protection and intelligence gathering. Royal cupbearers underwent extensive training in poison detection and antidote administration, while food tasters risked their lives to ensure royal safety. The elaborate protocols governing the preparation, transport, and service of royal beverages reflected the constant threat of assassination that shadowed Tudor monarchs throughout their reigns. The great bell of Westminster Abbey tolls across London as twilight descends upon the city, and in the candlelit chambers of noble houses throughout England, the evening ritual of ceremonial drinking begins with a precision that would impress the most demanding choreographer. Picture yourself in these perfumed halls where the scent of beeswax candles mingles with the bouquet of rare wines, where every movement follows protocols established over centuries of aristocratic tradition, and where the simple act of raising a cup to one's lips becomes an elaborate dance of deference, display, in delicate political maneuvering that reveals the vast gulf separating noble consumption from the humble ale drinking of common households. The ceremony of the loving cup, perhaps the most elaborate of all noble drinking rituals, transforms the sharing of wine into a sacramental act that binds participants together through shared participation in ancient traditions of loyalty and mutual protection. Watch as the great silver vessel, its surface gleaming with the reflected light of dozens of candles, passes from hand to hand around the assembled company, each participant following prescribed gestures that date back to Anglo-Saxon times when the act of drinking together represented the ultimate expression of trust and alliance. The person drinking must remove their cap and turn their back to their neighbor, trusting completely in their protection while in this vulnerable position, while the neighbor stands guard with hand on sword hilt, ready to defend against any treachery that might threaten during this moment of ritual exposure. The progression of this ceremony through ranks of nobility reveals the intricate hierarchies that governed every aspect of aristocratic life, as the order of participation communicates precise information about relative status, current favor, and political alliances that could shift with the changing fortunes of court politics. The host begins the ritual, demonstrating his authority over the assembled company, while the guest of honor receives the cup second, acknowledging their special status and the respect accorded to their presence. Lesser nobles follow in carefully, prescribed order that reflects their positions in the complex web of titles, holdings, tarried precedents that structured aristocratic society with mathematical precision. The vessels employed for these ceremonies represent the finest achievements of European metalworking, their precious materials and elaborate decorations serving multiple functions as symbols of wealth, demonstrations of artistic patronage, repositories of family history that connect current generations to their noble ancestors. Some loving cups bear the battle honors of crusading knights, their silver surfaces engraved with scenes of holy war that sanctified the drinking ritual with religious significance. Others display the heraldic achievements of multiple generations, their complex decorative schemes telling stories of marriage alliances, military victories, and royal favor that span centuries of family history. The wine chosen for ceremonial occasions undergo selection processes that rival the care taken in choosing royal brides. Noble households compete to offer beverages worthy of their guests' refined palates and sophisticated expectations. The finest Burgundian vintages, aged in monastery cellars and transported with religious care, provide the liquid foundation for ceremonies that celebrate everything from successful to harvests to military victories to the negotiation of marriage contracts. Spanish sweet wines, rich with the flavors of Mediterranean sunshine, create celebrations of particular joy and solemnity, while German Rhenish wines offer crisp, clean tastes appropriate for diplomatic occasions when clarity of thought and precision of speech serve political purposes. The training required for proper participation in noble drinking ceremonies begins in childhood, as young aristocrats learn the complex protocols that will govern their adult social interactions and determine their success in navigating the treacherous waters of court politics. Noble children practice the precise gestures required for ceremonial drinking with the same dedication that others might devote to swordplay or music, understanding that social grace and protocol knowledge represent forms of armor as essential as chainmail in protecting their interests and advancing their ambitions. The ability to perform these rituals flawlessly becomes a mark of noble breeding that distinguishes true aristocrats from mere wealthy merchants, who might afford fine wine but lack the cultural knowledge to consume it properly. The seasonal cycle of noble celebrations creates annual rhythms of ceremonial drinking that mark the passage of time through elaborate festivals and observances that require months of preparation and consume vast resources in pursuit of magnificence that demonstrates noble power and divine favor. Christmas celebrations featured ancient wassailing ceremonies where heated ales and spiced wines flow in quantities that challenge modern comprehension. Their consumption, accompanied by musical performances and theatrical presentations that transform drinking into multimedia entertainment. Easter festivities celebrate religious renewal through the blessing and sharing of special wines that have been prepared with particular care and ceremony. Their consumption marking the transition from Lenten abstinence to joyful celebration. The diplomatic functions of noble drinking ceremonies extend far beyond simple hospitality into the realm of international relations, where the quality of wine offered and the magnificence of ceremonial display communicate messages about political alliances, military capabilities, and cultural sophistication that influence the balance of power between kingdoms and principalities. Foreign ambassadors report on English noble hospitality in coded dispatches that help their governments assess English strength and intentions, while English nobles study continental drinking customs to ensure their own ceremonies meet international standards of magnificence and protocol. The failure to observe proper ceremonial forms could result in diplomatic incidents with consequences that extend far beyond simple social embarrassment. The economic implications of maintaining noble drinking standards create ripple effects throughout the broader economy. The demand for luxury beverages, precious vessels, specialized services supports entire industries devoted to aristocratic consumption. Vintners compete for noble patronage that can establish their reputations and secure their fortunes, while silversmiths and goldsmiths invest years in creating ceremonial vessels whose complexity and artistry push the boundaries of contemporary craftsmanship. The employment generated by noble drinking customs supports communities of specialized workers whose skills contribute to England's growing reputation for luxury, production, and cultural sophistication. The religious dimensions of noble drinking ceremonies reflect the complex theological landscape of Tudor England, where traditional Catholic practices must accommodate emerging Protestant sensibilities while maintaining the sacred character that legitimizes aristocratic authority and social hierarchy. The blessing of wine for ceremonial use requires careful navigation of religious controversies, while the incorporation of biblical imagery into vessel decoration demonstrates noble piety without committing to specific theological positions that might prove politically dangerous. Some ceremonies incorporate elements borrowed from communion services, creating hybrid rituals that satisfy both spiritual and social requirements. The artistic patronage represented by noble drinking vessels provides opportunities for innovative craftsmen to experiment with new techniques and materials while creating objects that serve as permanent memorials to noble taste and cultural achievement. Royal commissions and noble orders push the boundaries of contemporary metalworking, enameling, and gem cutting, their technical challenges driving innovations that influence decorative arts throughout Europe. The stylistic choices made by noble patrons establish aesthetic trends that filter down through society. Their influence visible in everything from merchant class tableware to parish church decorations. The educational aspects of noble drinking ceremonies serve multiple functions in preparing aristocratic youth for their adult responsibilities while transmitting cultural knowledge and political wisdom that cannot be learned from books or formal instruction. Young nobles observe the subtle interplay of personality, politics, and protocol that governs ceremonial occasions, learning to read the unspoken communications that flow beneath the surface of polite conversation and ritual observance. The ability to interpret these sophisticated social signals becomes essential for success in court, politics, and diplomatic service. The technological innovations required for elaborate ceremonial service challenge contemporary engineering and architectural capabilities as noble houses seek mechanical solutions to the logistical problems of serving hundreds of guests, while maintaining appropriate standards of magnificence and ceremony. Elaborate dumbwaiter systems transport precious vessels from secure storage areas to serving locations, while sophisticated temperature control methods ensure that wines reach guests at optimal serving conditions. Some noble houses incorporate architectural features specifically designed to enhance ceremonial drinking, including acoustic arrangements that amplify ritual speeches and lighting systems that dramatize the presentation of precious vessels. D. Documentation and historical preservation of noble drinking ceremonies provides valuable insights into the cultural values and social structures that shaped Tudor aristocratic society, while creating permanent records of artistic achievement and cultural development. Detailed accounts of ceremonial occasions preserved in family archives and official records offer windows into the daily life experiences of noble families and the complex social relationships that governed their interactions. These historical documents complement archaeological evidence and artistic artifacts to create comprehensive pictures of how aristocratic drinking culture evolved and adapted to changing circumstances. The legacy of noble drinking ceremonies extends far beyond their immediate social and political functions into the realm of cultural heritage that continues to influence modern understanding of ceremony, hospitality, and social ritual. Contemporary ceremonial practices, in everything from state dinners to corporate celebrations, draw inspiration from Tudor noble traditions. Their protocols and aesthetic principles providing templates for modern occasions that require formal dignity and cultural sophistication. The artistic achievements represented by surviving ceremonial vessels continue to inspire contemporary craftsmen and designers. Works extends these ancient traditions into new forms and contexts. In the dying light of a Tudor evening, as the last rays of sunlight filtered through the diamond-paned windows of great halls and humble cottages alike, the profound contrasts that defined drinking culture in the 16th century revealed themselves with crystalline clarity. Picture yourself standing at the threshold between two worlds, one where golden goblets catch the gleam of hundreds of candles, while rare wines flow like rivers of liquid jewels, and another where wooden bowls hold simple ale that represents the difference between life and death, sustenance and starvation. These parallel universes of consumption, existing within the same realm but separated by chasms of wealth, education, and social position, illuminate the fundamental tensions that shape Tudor society and the liquid traditions that both divided and occasionally united the various classes of English humanity. The health implications of different drinking patterns reveal complex relationships between social status and physical well-being, where aristocratic access to varied beverages and medical knowledge sometimes provided advantages in nutrition and disease prevention, while the stress and overconsumption associated with court life created different health risks that could prove equally dangerous. Noble physicians provided guidance on appropriate wine selection and consumption patterns based on contemporary medical theory, while common families relied on traditional knowledge and practical experience to manage their drinking habits within the constraints of limited resources and brewing capabilities. The irony emerged that wealthy nobles sometimes suffered from diseases of excess, while poor families maintained better health through forced moderation and simpler consumption patterns. The technological innovations that supported elite drinking culture required massive investments in specialized equipment and expert knowledge that remained forever beyond the reach of common households, creating technological divides that reinforced social hierarchies through differential access to improved preservation, preparation, and presentation methods. Noble houses employed master craftsmen to create elaborate serving systems and precision instruments that enhanced beverage quality and ceremonial display, while common brewers relied on traditional tools and techniques that had served their ancestors for generations. These technological disparities contributed to differences in beverage quality and consumption experience that both reflected and reinforced broader patterns of social stratification. The educational requirements for full participation in elite drinking culture created barriers that effectively excluded common people from aristocratic social circles, as the complex protocols and sophisticated knowledge necessary for proper ceremonial behavior required years of training and cultural immersion available only to those born into noble households. The ability to identify fine wines, execute proper toasting procedures, and navigate ceremonial protocols became markers of social breeding that distinguished true aristocrats from wealthy merchants, who might afford expensive beverages but lacked the cultural knowledge to consume them appropriately. This educational dimension of drinking culture served as a form of social control that maintained class boundaries through the exclusion of those who had not received proper training in aristocratic customs. The religious implications of different drinking traditions reveal how spiritual beliefs and practices adapted to accommodate various social circumstances and economic constraints, with elaborate blessing ceremonies and sacred vessel decorations characterizing noble consumption, while simpler prayers and traditional rituals marked common family brewing and drinking practices. Noble households could afford to commission religious artwork and ceremonial objects that transformed drinking into elaborate spiritual exercises, while common families incorporated basic prayers and seasonal observances into their more modest consumption patterns. Yet both groups understood alcohol consumption as possessing sacred dimensions that connected human activity to divine blessing and spiritual well-being. The international perspectives on English drinking culture varied dramatically depending on which social level foreign observers encountered, with diplomatic visitors to noble courts reporting magnificent hospitality that rivaled the finest European traditions, while merchants and common travelers experienced simpler but equally essential traditions of public house hospitality and household brewing. These different international impressions contributed to complex and sometimes contradictory foreign perceptions of English civilization, where reports of royal magnificence competed with accounts of common simplicity to create multifaceted images of English cultural achievement and social organization. The artistic achievements represented by elite drinking vessels created permanent monuments to noble taste and cultural aspiration that survived long after their original owners had passed into history, while the simple wooden bowls and ceramic cups used by common families rarely received the care and preservation necessary for long-term survival. This differential preservation of material culture means that modern understanding of Tudor drinking habits tends to emphasize elite practices while underrepresenting the experiences of common people whose consumption patterns actually characterize the daily reality of most English subjects. Archaeological investigation helps correct this imbalance by recovering evidence of common drinking practices through scientific analysis of household sites and refuse deposits. The psychological effects of participating in different drinking cultures created profound differences in social identity and personal self-perception, where nobles developed sophisticated understanding of ceremony and display, while common people cultivated practical knowledge and survival skills that served different but equally essential functions in their respective social environments. The confidence and authority that came from mastering elite drinking protocols served nobles well in diplomatic and political contexts, while the resilience and resourcefulness developed through managing household brewing and simple consumption patterns helped common families survive in challenging economic and environmental conditions. The preservation of cultural memory surrounding different drinking traditions created distinct historical narratives that emphasized either noble magnificence or common resilience, depending on whose stories received documentation and preservation. The written records that survive from Tudor England predominantly reflect elite perspectives and experiences, while common drinking traditions survived primarily through oral transmission and archaeological evidence. This differential preservation of cultural memory influences modern understanding of Tudor society and the role of alcohol in shaping social relationships and cultural identity. The ultimate convergence of these separate drinking cultures occurred during moments of national crisis or celebration, when social boundaries temporarily dissolved and common cause required shared participation in liquid rituals that transcended normal class distinctions. Military campaigns, royal progresses, and major religious festivals created opportunities for nobles and commoners to share in consumption experiences that revealed underlying similarities in human needs and desires, while temporarily suspending the elaborate protocols that normally separated their drinking worlds. These moments of convergence illuminate the fundamental humanity that connected all Tudor subjects, regardless of their social station or the vessels from which they drank, their daily liquid sustenance. And so, dear listener, as our gentle journey through the liquid landscapes of the 16th century draws to its peaceful close, we find ourselves returning to the quiet safety of our modern world, where clean water flows freely from taps and wide beverages of countless varieties await our choosing in refrigerated abundance. The morning light that now filters through your windows illuminates a world transformed beyond the wildest dreams of those Tudor ancestors whose drinking customs we have explored together through these long, contemplative hours. Yet, in the silence of this moment, perhaps you can still hear the distant echo of their voices, the gentle splash of ale being poured into wooden bowls, the soft clink of pewter against oak, the whispered prayers of gratitude for another day's survival in a world where every sip carried the weight of life and death. Picture yourself now as a bridge spanning 5 centuries, your modern understanding enriched by intimate knowledge of how your ancestors lived, drank, and died in service to the eternal human quest for safe sustenance and social connection. The small beer that sustained Tudor families through countless mornings bears little resemblance to our casual beverages, yet both serve the fundamental human need for liquid nourishment that connects us across the vast expanse of time. The ceremonial wines that graced noble tables may seem impossibly distant from our casual dining, yet they fulfilled the same deep human desire for beauty, community, and celebration that marks our own special occasions with familiar rituals of shared consumption. The archaeological treasures we have examined together, those fragmented pottery sherds, those stained animal bones, those precious metal vessels tarnished with age, speak to us across the centuries with voices as clear as any written chronicle. Their material witness testifying to lives lived with intensity and purpose in circumstances we can barely imagine. Each fragment tells its own story of human hands that shaped clay, lifted cups, participated in the ancient dance of survival that our modern safety allows us to view with a comfortable detachment of secure observers. Yet, beneath that security lies the recognition that we share fundamental needs and desires with those distant ancestors whose liquid sustenance we have followed through markets and monasteries, taverns and palaces, battlefields and bedchambers. Brewing wisdom that sustained Tudor England represents accumulated knowledge of fermentation, cumulation, and nutrition that evolved over centuries of trial and error, success and failure, life and death in service to the simple goal of transforming grain into safe liquid sustenance. Their understanding of yeast behavior, temperature control, and ingredient balance often surpassed our own in its practical application. Their intimate knowledge of brewing cycles and storage techniques, refined through generations of daily practice, that made the difference between survival and starvation. The alewives who managed household brewing operations possessed scientific knowledge that rivaled university-trained physicians. Their expertise, earned through hands-on experience with the biological processes that turned simple grain into complex, life-sustaining beverages, the social hierarchies revealed through drinking. Customs illuminate power structures and cultural values that shaped every aspect of Tudor life, from the humblest cottage to the most magnificent palace. The vessels from which people drank announced their social status as clearly as their clothing or housing, while the beverages they consumed reflected economic circumstances that determined not only luxury, but basic survival. Yet, within these rigid hierarchies, existed spaces for human connection and mutual recognition that transcended social boundaries. Moments when shared consumption created temporary communities bound together by the universal experience of lifting liquid to human lips. The royal courts we have visited together, with their elaborate ceremonies and precious vessels, represent the pinnacle of Tudor drinking culture, while simultaneously revealing its fundamental purposes and limitations. King James IV's mead tent and King Henry VIII's golden goblets served political and diplomatic functions that extended far beyond simple hospitality. Yet, both monarchs faced the same basic human need for safe hydration that governed the humblest peasant's morning ale. The magnificent ceremonies that surrounded royal consumption created theater of power and legitimacy. But beneath the performance lay the simple biological reality that all human bodies require liquid sustenance regardless of their social rank or political authority. The mysteries uncovered by archaeological investigation remind us that the past continues to reveal itself through patient scientific inquiry, each excavation and analysis adding new chapters to our understanding of how our ancestors lived and died in circumstances that tested human ingenuity and resilience. The tavern bones of York speak to us with voices preserved in molecular signatures and chemical traces, their testimony complementing written records while revealing aspects of daily life that chronicles rarely captured. These archaeological voices remind us that history lives not only in documents and monuments, but also in the physical remains of ordinary objects used by ordinary people in pursuit of extraordinary survival. The technological innovations that support it, Tudor drinking culture, demonstrate human creativity and adaptability in the face of challenges that would overwhelm most modern individuals. Their solutions revealing engineering sophistication and practical wisdom that deserves our admiration and study. From the portable brewing equipment that accompanied armies on campaign to the elaborate serving systems that graced royal banquets, Tudor innovations reflected deep understanding of mechanical principles and material properties that enabled remarkable achievements with limited resources. Their success in creating safe, nutritious, and even beautiful beverages under challenging conditions speaks to human potential that transcends technological limitations through knowledge, skill, and determination. The seasonal rhythms that governed Tudor drinking patterns connect their world to natural cycles that our modern lives have largely abandoned, yet which continue to influence agricultural production and environmental conditions in ways that affect contemporary beverage industries and consumption patterns. The spring brewing sessions that utilized fresh grain, the summer preservation challenges that required careful temperature control, the autumn harvest celebrations that marked successful agricultural cycles, and the winter storage techniques that stretched supplies through lean months, all reflect relationships with natural systems that modern consumers rarely consider, but which remained fundamental to human survival and well-being. The international connections revealed through Tudor drinking culture illuminate trade networks and cultural exchanges that prefigure our modern global economy while operating within vastly different technological and political constraints. The Spanish wines that graced English tables, the German brewing techniques that influenced English ale production, the Italian vessels that inspired English craftsmanship, and the exotic spices that flavored traditional beverages all testify to human desire for variety and luxury that drove exploration, commerce, and cultural development across national boundaries and linguistic barriers. The religious dimensions of Tudor drinking culture reveal complex relationships between spiritual belief and material practice that challenged individuals and communities to reconcile divine teachings with human needs, sacred principles with practical necessities, the blessing of brewing operations, the incorporation of religious imagery into drinking vessels, the development of ceremonial practices that honored both God and social hierarchy, and the ongoing debates about appropriate consumption levels, all reflect struggles to integrate spiritual life with material existence that continue to influence contemporary discussions about ethics, responsibility, and human purpose. The The gender roles embedded in Tudor drinking culture illuminate women's contributions to survival and social organization that often receive insufficient recognition in traditional historical accounts focused on political and military events. The alewives, who managed household brewing. The noble ladies, who presided over ceremonial occasions. The merchants' wives, who supervised tavern operations. And the countless unnamed women who ensured family survival through skilled management of liquid resources. All deserve remembrance for their essential roles in sustaining the civilization we have explored together. Through these peaceful hours, the economic systems that supported Tudor drinking culture created networks of production, distribution, and consumption that connected rural farmers with urban consumers, local craftsmen with international markets, household production with commercial enterprise in ways that revealed the complexity and sophistication of pre-industrial economic organization, the grain that fed brewing operations, the fuel that powered fermentation, the vessels that contained precious liquids, and the transport systems that moved beverages from production sites to consumers, all required coordination and investment that supported entire communities and regions through their participation in alcohol-related economic activities. The medical understanding that influenced Tudor drinking practices reflects contemporary knowledge of human physiology and disease that, while limited by modern standards, has often achieved remarkable practical success in promoting health and preventing illness through careful attention to diet, nutrition, and consumption patterns. The recognition that fermented beverages provided safer hydration than contaminated water. The understanding that different alcoholic drinks affected human behavior in predictable ways, and the development of medicinal preparations that combined therapeutic herbs with alcoholic carriers, all demonstrate practical medical wisdom that saved countless lives and improved human welfare. The cultural memory preserved in Tudor drinking traditions continues to influence contemporary practices and beliefs in ways that connect our modern experiences to ancient human customs and values that transcend technological change and social evolution. The rituals of hospitality, the appreciation of craftsmanship, the understanding of ceremony as community building, and the recognition of consumption as social communication, all persist in modified forms that honor traditional wisdom while adapting to contemporary circumstances and opportunities. Sleep well, dear listener, in the knowledge that you have shared in the rich heritage of human civilization, that you understand a little more deeply the roots from which our modern world has grown, and that the gentle rhythm of your breathing connects you still to the eternal human story of survival, creativity, and hope that spans the centuries and unites us all in the common experience of being gloriously, temporarily, and bravely human. The Tudor ancestors whose drinking customs we have explored together have given us the gift of perspective, the treasure of historical knowledge, and the comfort of understanding that human ingenuity and resilience can overcome challenges that seem insurmountable while creating beauty and meaning that transcend material circumstances of any particular age or condition.